Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business.
Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Quarterly Teleclass. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson. Our class today is entitled Winning Body Language for Powerful Presentations, and our guest expert is Mark Bowden. Welcome, Mark.
Hi there.
So glad to have you on the line. I'm going to put us into presentation mode so we have a crystal clear recording here. So 1 second. Okay, Mark, I still have you with me?
I hope so. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Great.
So let me give you a little bit of background, everybody, about Mark. And by the way, we're going to open it up for questions at the end. And if you have any burning questions that you want to email to me in the meantime, shoot them over to jane@speakerlauncher.com, and I'll see if I can bring them up with Mark. So Mark is the author of Winning Body Language, Control the Conversation, Command Attention, and Convey the Right Message Without Saying a Word. His book has been a tremendous success, and some of his private coaching work has brought him national attention, like when he helped our Prime Minister get reelected, which wasn't that long ago. So Mark, tell us a little bit about your background and how you came into the profession of speech coach.
Okay, well, I guess a long time ago now, maybe about 20 years or so, I started training as an actor in the UK and actually ended up traveling all over the world and studying very specifically in visual theatre or physical theatre, which is really about how do you tell stories with pictures. So I traveled all over the world, not only working as a performer, but training other performers and training directors as well. And so I guess maybe about 8 or so years ago, I got hired to work with some politicians and business people, and they wanted to know, how can you change people's feelings very quickly? How can you, when you're a stage performer, move people? I mean, emotionally move them. And I had a lot of techniques that I'd studied and created from my travels around the world in how to use physicality to move people emotionally. So I passed those techniques on. And a few years down the line, a bit further, companies wanted me to come in and talk to a mass audience about this. And so I guess my keynote speaking started from that, from really people wanting to learn in large groups how to change the feelings of an audience really quickly.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And so give us a little bit of a breakdown of kind of how your business is operating today. I know that you have some product, books, etc. Do you do a lot of keynote speaking? What's your percentage in terms of coaching and speaking, etc.?
Yeah, so I would say a lot of my time I'm flying outside of Canada on the whole, and I work across the world. And I'll be talking to, usually not huge groups, just because of the nature of the work. A lot of groups want to get together in, groups of maybe 20 to 50, so that they can actually get sometimes some one-on-one attention. Obviously, when you've got those larger groups, 500, 1,000, 2,000, those bigger audiences, it's much more of a speech. It's more difficult to interact with that audience. And given that a lot of the work that I'm doing on is how to interact physically and verbally with an audience to win their trust and to gain their attention and essentially to profit from that conversation, sometimes it's more interesting and useful if the audiences are smaller. So for me, it's often difficult to judge when I'm doing training or when I'm doing a keynote speech. What I'd say is that keynote speeches tend to last for less time, and training can be as long as 3 days. So on the whole, I'd say I'm doing more training seminars. That would be the vast percentage of the business. The more profitable area really is keynote speaking, and I do quite a bit of that. And the one-to-one work is really what I can fit in when I'm not doing that large training or the keynote speaking. It's what I can because it, in terms of what you can make in an hour that people can afford, it doesn't really compare to training or keynote speaking. Hope that makes sense.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So when it comes to, so we have all of these professional speakers on the line, and they're always hearing me preach that there's no better form of marketing than a fantastic speech. And
Sure.
so to what degree do you think that body language has to do with the success or the failure of a person's, let's say, keynote?
Sure. So, look, I would agree is that you can't do anything to replace great content that works on people immediately, okay? And I think that's been part of my success, is that the content I give people works on them there and then, immediately. They get a change, they can see and feel and hear the change in themselves. And, every time I train or speak, I get a whole gang of people coming up saying, come and speak at this organization, we want you at Vegas to speak here. And so essentially the best marketing I think you can ever do is do great work. And that's the end of that. However, here's what I would say about how body language fits in, is that the moment you come on stage, the moment you're seen by the audience, they judge you. And they judge you in some fairly harsh ways. And the way they judge you could cause a large amount of that audience, or an important section of that audience, to switch off immediately and never really listen. They might look like they're listening, they might nod their heads, and afterwards they may be able to talk to you in a way that makes you feel like they actually listened, but they didn't really connect with you. And the first way we know whether we can connect with somebody or not is not via what they say, it's via the behavior we see them doing, and also the tonality with which they speak. And the part of the brain that processes that is a really old part of the brain. In evolutionary terms, it's 500 million years old. It goes right back pre-reptilian to fish. So we're being judged by a very primitive part of the human brain every time we get up to speak. We're judged within about 1/50th of a second before we've even opened our mouths. And when we do open our mouths, we're being judged on our tonality, the music that we're making. And that judgment could override any content that you've actually got for that audience. So my feeling has been, and my practice essentially, and my work is hinged on the idea that you want to cut yourself a break and make the best impression within 1/50th of a second of them seeing you, and carry on that great impression as you talk to that audience.
Wow. Okay, I'm just getting ready to come back to speaking in September. I usually take a break for the summer, and now you've got me peeing in my pants. I'm nervous. Now I'm nervous, Mark. I was okay before this, and now I'm nervous. Okay, so how can I hedge my bets? What can I do in the first few minutes of my talk to drop the judgment and create trust and rapport with my audience?
Sure, absolutely. So look, here's the thing, is that you can never stop the audience judging you. It's being done by a part of their brain which is 500 million years old. It's switched on all the time, even when they're asleep. There is no way of stopping it. There are some drugs that you can give them that will stop it, but it'll also stop their heart rate and breathing as well. So that you'll kill them. So it's not legal. So your audience are going to judge you no matter what. So what we have to do is work out how can we cause the audience to be more likely to judge you in a good light. So here's the way this reptilian brain, or the primitive brain, some people call it the brainstem. Here's the 4 categories it puts people into the moment it sees them. It decides, are you my friend? Are you my enemy? Are you my potential sexual partner? And if you're none of those 3, essentially that part of the brain is indifferent to the other human being. So when you walk on, as a speaker, Jane, when you come back to speaking, after the summer, the moment you hit that stage, whatever audience is there, their brain at an unconscious level is going, is Jane my friend? Is Jane my enemy? Or is Jane my potential sexual partner? And if she's none of those, I don't need to listen to her because she has nothing for me. She's not my friend. She's not here to feed me, to give me any resource, to keep me alive. She's not my enemy, so I don't need to watch her because she's going to take stuff away from me. Okay? She's not going to take my resource away. She's not giving me signals that say she's a good mix genetically for me and would carry on my genetic code. So if none of those three, I'm not going to pay any attention. I might nod my head because, I'm being paid to be here by the company, so I've got to stay lively because I want to collect my pay packet. So I will nod my head, but the communication is not going to go deep inside me. So look, you want to fall into, I would say, the friend category. You could fall into enemy category for an audience, but they'll hate what you say, even if it's good news for them. If you show them the non-verbal communication of I'm your enemy, they will view everything around you as being bad for them. You could put yourself into the category of potential sexual partner, but understand that's a short relationship for the primitive brain. It's not interested in families and being together forever. It's just interested in, a sexual link now. So that's kind of not useful. The category, by the way, for most people, they're predisposed to put you in indifferent category because there's 3 billion people on the planet, and not everybody can be our friend, our enemy, and our potential sexual partner. So understand what we're battling against is how do you get into friend category? I am your provider. I'm here to give you resource. Within 1/50th of a second of the audience seeing you, how do they detect you are my friend? And that's the job that I tend to do with clients is how do you get into friend category? So would you like me to tell you a little bit about the signals for friend?
Yes, please. Give us some signals, and we should probably know a few of the enemy signals as well so that we can avoid any kind of common mistakes that you think keynoters might make.
Sure, absolutely. So, one of the simplest that I guess everybody would be able to come up with is to smile. Okay, that's a signal for friend. Now understand there's something very specific about the smile of friend because there is a smile of enemy. The smile of an enemy is that you show your teeth and your eyes do not wrinkle at the side. Okay? So in England we call them crow's feet when you get little wrinkles in your eyes. Yeah. When you smile, okay, which is basically you pull the sides of your mouth up, some muscles tense up in your cheeks which also cause little wrinkles to happen in your eyes. Those two signals are the universal signal across the planet, whether you're male or female, no matter what society you're from, no matter who your parents from, what tribe, what nationality, it doesn't matter. It's the same across the world. Those two signals say, I'm your friend, I'm here for you, okay? It says, I'm not here to harm you, okay? Now, having said that, if I don't allow those eyes to wrinkle up and I show big teeth, that is the signal for, get out of my territory, I'll bite you. And it's the same across the universe, and it doesn't matter if you're wearing a suit or not. Your audience's primitive brain sees a big tooth smile without the wrinkles in the eyes as being a threat. Now, it's not that they won't watch you. They'll absolutely watch you. In fact, they'll watch you very closely. Just they'll view everything in their unconscious mind that you say, everything as being a negative. So there's a good smile, essentially, and a bad smile. But look, by the way, being able to move your facial muscles on command is very, very difficult. So in fact, I wouldn't even suggest to people, hey, try and put on a genuine smile. Okay? Because it's really difficult to do. You've got 50 muscles in your face, give or take a few, depending on how you categorize them, and therefore 50 to the power of 50 potential gestures that you could make in your face. And most of them are meaningless. Most of them mean nothing. So here's what you can do to instantly get in friend category. And I named my company after this gesture, and also I named my system after this gesture. And it's called the truth plane, essentially. And here's what you do. If you just place your hands at belly height, at navel height, right where your belly button is, and the gesture that you make is open-palmed, so basically it's the signal of no tools or weapons in the hand, and you're gesturing in an open way directly at navel height. It's the universal signal across the planet, across human beings, to say, I'm your friend, I'm calm and assertive, I'm vulnerable to you in a very vulnerable area of my body, and therefore I don't think you're going to attack me, and I'm certainly not going to attack you, so I'm your friend. If you do that, you'll find that actually you gently smile anyway, and you'll find that your audience gently smile back at you, and it doesn't matter what country you're in, this gesture works. It's DNA programmed into human beings. So I call it the truth plane. The truth plane is a horizontal plane that cuts through your body at your navel height, at your belly button height. And in fact, the majority of the time, if you speak with your hands gesturing in that truth plane, you'll find that your audience believe you to be calm, assertive, genuine, and honest. And it really doesn't matter what you're saying, because this gesture is pre-programmed into the unconscious mind. It overrides anything that you're saying verbally. Because understand, language is done by a 100,000-year-old part of the brain, whereas vision is done in evolutionary terms by a 500 million year-old processor. You know, the patterns that it uses to process data, those patterns are 500 million years old. So if you walk out onto the stage, my advice to the vast majority of my clients who want to win trust immediately is open their hands out at truth plane height and allow the audience to see that. Hope that makes sense in that description.
So when you're doing that, you are basically launching into your presentation kind of using that gesture. I assume that you're talking at the same time.
Absolutely. Or understand, you might be talking at the same time. I guarantee you they're not listening. I guarantee you that at that point they haven't started to process language. Their unconscious mind is still going, what is this person? Not what are they saying. They're going, who is this person? What is their behavior? To what extent can we trust their behavior? Once the behavior is trusted, then the language center in the brain will open up and go, and what are they saying? Okay? Understand that language is about, it's essentially there in order to co-opt other human beings. Nonverbal communication is there in order to tell other human beings how we think and feel now. It's there to instruct them as to how we'd like their behavior to be around us. Language itself is designed for co-option. It's designed for being able to bring teams and groups together in order to achieve something bigger than us. So I hope that makes sense to you.
Sure. So what would be some other things that would be immediate turn-offs? You know, different things that people might do either in the first few minutes or throughout their presentation that would really be a turn-off to an audience.
Sure. So I would say here's the biggest turn-off that we will see, and quite frankly, the majority of people who ever get up on a stage in front of an audience will do this, and that's to start speaking with their hands hanging down by their sides. Okay? So this is hands. There are a couple of reasons for a human being ever to hang their hands down by their sides. One is in order to go to rest, go to a rest state. And we do that when we stand still and we hang our hands down by our side. It naturally lowers our blood pressure and lowers our breathing rate and our heart rate. And because we're social animals and we have something called mirror neurons in the brain, mirror neurons, the audience copy. By the way, if you're listening to me now, what I've done as I'm talking to you about this is I have my hands hanging down by my side. And I'm standing still as I have my hands hanging down by my side. And what I'd like you to do is think about how I'm now coming across to you as a speaker.
No energy. Yeah.
No energy. Now, it's not that I haven't got energy. I've still mentally got the energy that I had for you before. It's just the physical position that I put my body in, which is to stand still with my hands hanging down by my side. It's not designed to deliver energy. It's designed, when still, to take energy down. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to allow myself to move my body around a little bit more. So I'm just moving around the room that I'm in at the moment. My hands are still hanging down by my side, and because now my legs are moving, this is causing enough oxygen to be pumped, blood and oxygen to be pumped around my body to get more to my brain. So my language center is working better now, and I feel a bit more energized. Okay. But maybe you're still detecting from me that there's not the fluidity of speech that was there before, and certainly I feel more anxious and nervous about talking with you now, because essentially I'm moving around with my hands down by my side. The reason to do that is to run, is to move away. We use our hands down by the side when we're walking or when we're running, because it's a way of creating extra weight in the body, the right kind of pendulum-like weight to propel the body forward. And this is what the majority of people do on the planet. They walk onto a stage, their hands are hanging down by their sides, they start to sway from side to side or move up and down the stage, or they stand still, as I'm just going to do for you now, and the voice goes into a slower, sleepier state, as is happening with me now as I stand still with my hands down by my side. Just as reference, what I'm going to do now is I've just moved my hands now up to the truth plane. So my hands now are open, they are at belly height, they are gesturing lightly in that area, and I want you to think now about how my tonality comes across. Do I feel more calm and assertive to you? Do I feel more in command of my speech? Do I feel more in command of my words? Do you feel that you could listen to me longer, or are you even engaging more with me now with that simple move? You know, hopefully the sound quality might be good enough on this call that you can hear a little bit of that. How does that come across to you, Jane?
Yeah, I can hear a difference for sure, and I can definitely see where people, I think what they might be doing is, because a lot of people who are first starting out, not even just as professional speakers, but just, you know, the executive giving a speech, they're thinking, look calm. And so that's why they might do it in the first place, is trying to appear calm. You mentioned something about getting oxygen to the brain. What about, is there any kind of preparation that you do before walking onto kind of a big important stage? I've always done breathing because I thought about the oxygen getting to the brain. What's your preparation?
You know, my preparation simply is to have a conversation with myself about the mess I've got myself into. Essentially, because you know, me personally, and I know a lot of my clients feel the same, is it's always very difficult for us, whatever we do, to reduce the stress around public speaking. Okay? And I've been on stages, you know, pretty much since the age of, I guess, about 5. So I've been around this for a long time. I've trained all over the world. I've got a lot of experience in this, and I've trained some experienced actors, and the best ones and the best performers that I know, every time they say, you know what, I still feel stress when I go on there. Okay? And why wouldn't you? Because you have put yourself into a position where you are being judged. You're absolutely being judged by something which is bigger than you, which is an audience. There are more of them. They're stronger. They have more power than you have. Yeah? So, and certainly their power to judge is infinite, and you don't know how they're judging you. So you are always at a disadvantage when you move on to speak. And your unconscious mind hates that. It hates that disadvantage. So one of the things I do is to accept the anxiety that it's giving me. To say, you know what, you're right. You're absolutely right. This is not something I should really be doing in the best case, but here it is. This is how I make my living. Okay? And I've decided to do this. So this is my decision to go on and speak. So I'll say to my unconscious mind, which is sending me a whole heap of adrenaline, and a whole bunch of other chemicals to try and get me out of this. And I say, thanks for your warning. You're absolutely right. I have no idea what's going to happen next, but this is how I make my living. This is how I feed the kids, and so I'm going to go on and do this. That's personally what I do, and that conversation has worked a great deal for the speakers and the executives and the GA politicians that I've worked with over the years. You know, it doesn't matter how powerful they get, the most seemingly powerful of them often get the most nervous, the most anxious, because there is more at risk and more judgment going on.
That makes perfect sense. So let's say, Mark, you're in the middle of your presentation and you feel the energy in the room starting to slip. Is there any kind of thing that you could do to try to bring it back?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, the great key is always to take responsibility for it. Understand the pack copy the leader. Yeah, the group, the audience are copying you. If the energy has slipped, it's because your energy has slipped. It's your responsibility. If you're a great speaker, it's because the energy has slipped. It's because they're just copying you. They are in what we call limbic resonance with you. They will be copying your energy state. They'll be copying what they believe to be your thought process. It's called theory of mind. They'll be using theory of mind. They'll be copying your physicality. They'll be copying your breathing patterns. So the key is to change your own physicality. Okay? The one key is never blame them. It's never their fault. It's always your fault. If the thing goes well, it's your fault. If it goes badly, it's your fault. It was never the space, and it was never the audience, and it was never the content. All of those things can be dealt with. It can be overridden by you. So here's what I would do. If I feel the energy dropping, the first thing I'm going to do is want to lift my energy up. Now, one of the ways I can do that is to bring my hands up to my chest area, up to what I call the passion plane. That will automatically send my heart rate up, my breathing rate up, my blood pressure up. The audience, if I'm the leader, the audience will copy me, and their heart rate, breathing rate, blood pressure will go up as well. They'll start to copy the faster breathing pattern that I get. They'll start to copy the theory of mind that they have of me, and they'll start to follow my train of thought, and that should lift the energy up. Because maybe the energy is dropped because I've, say, for example, dropped my hands down by my side. Which, as you say, could be about wanting to seem casual and relaxed. But on the whole, for the majority of people I meet across the planet, they don't walk onto a stage with their hands down by the side because they feel that they're casual and relaxed. They're walking on like that because they're in fear. And when you're in fear, one of the things that your body is designed to do is to drop your center of gravity, crunch in your stomach, and hang your hands down by your sides, and to cause you to sway from side to side. This is so that you can cut and run really quickly. It's a fight and flight mechanism. So the majority of people with their hands down by their side are simply displaying fight and flight physicality. So we want to move away from that and move up to the chest where it's more passionate, and that could pull the audience back. One of the other things you can do, which is not so nonverbal, more conceptual, is to talk to the audience about the energy level. You know, one of the things that will re-engage them is if you're correct about the energy level having dropped. Now, that for many speakers will mean they're going to move off their script if they have one. But I can guarantee if the energy level has dropped, your script's no good anyway. So you may as well talk about anything else, because they're not engaged in. If the energy level has dropped, they're certainly not engaged in what you're saying. Anything else stands a great chance of getting them back. What you're talking about now has clearly lost them. So to be able to say to them, you know, I get a sense the energy level has dropped. Is that right? It could cause them to nod their heads. Now they're nodding their heads. Now they're in agreement with you. Now you can start to win it back from a state of agreement. You know, that kind of technique is often a little bit more risky. So, you know, people tend to find that a little bit more risky. And sometimes it punctures the illusion that, the content is great. But I would say, if you've lost the audience and the energy is down, move off your usual content, because they're not enjoying it and you're probably not either, and that's why you've probably lost them.
So one of the things that I do, I only speak to groups of professional speakers. So I'm giving them information, and in the first, half hour, 40 minutes, I've kind of planted a lot of seeds, and about that mark, I will look at them, and more often than not, they'll look like deers in the headlights. And so I've come to understand that I'll say, okay, you're all looking at me like deers in the headlights. Tell me what you're thinking about, and they will say, well, I'm thinking now that I have to change my website, or I'm thinking about my promise statement, or I'm thinking about picking a lane, or whatever it might be. And so I'm getting them back with me just by getting them to vocalize what's going on inside their head, because thinking can often be a way of, I don't know about the energy level, but certainly they look like they are, in kind of a stunned state.
Right, absolutely. So look, I would differentiate between the energy is dropped and they're in thought.
Yeah.
I would like nothing more than my audience to be thinking about what I'm saying, because that's really what I'm there for. Is I want to change their behavior, give them new options, new behaviors to take, and in order for them to be able to do that, they're really going to have to do some thinking. So that would be a lovely moment for me if they're sitting there and their eyes are wide open and I'm going, hey, you look a little bit stunned by this. Am I right? Am I wrong? I mean, where are you? And I can get them talking with me. And that for me, in the style of speaking that I do, really it's about trying to have a conversation with the audience, whether it's two there or 2,000. I want to, as much as I can, get them talking with me, because look, the more the audience talk, the more they like it. That's the I mean, it's great going and watching Bill Clinton speak. It's kind of interesting, but if I could speak with him, that'd be far more interesting. Or if my friend could, or if somebody I know could speak with him, if somebody as a proxy for me could, that would be way more interesting. It's like, do you want to go and hear Bill Clinton speak, or would you like to talk to him, talk with him, have a conversation? Well, we'd all rather have a conversation, because we all know the content would be way better, because it would be about what we want to know, rather than about what he or a script writer or his management think that I want to know. So, getting into a conversation is key there.
So let's talk about the stage now, and I think most of the people on the call would already be convinced that they need to be out from behind the podium with a lapel microphone on and have no kind of wires or anything.
Sure.
Let's talk about pacing and using the stage and things like that.
Sure, absolutely. So for anybody who's not convinced about being outside of a podium, here's the way that our primitive brain thinks. When no data, it defaults to excuse me. When no data, it defaults to the negative, or when insufficient data, it goes to a negative state of mind. So if you can't be seen, the unconscious mind views what can't be seen as bad, as negative. So your content from behind a podium will never feel as good to an audience as when it's outside of a podium. The only difference I'd make to this is if your podium has the American seal of office on the front of it. That would be the only thing. If it's got a really important seal of office on it, it adds an image of importance. I'd be quite happy to stand behind the podium that the President of America uses to make a speech. But anything else, if it's got Sheraton on front of it, I don't really need that. It doesn't give me any greater branding than the audience seeing the whole of my body. So, come out from behind the podium, let the audience see as much of your body as you possibly can. And as to movement on the stage, well, the movement has to not be erratic, it has to make sense, and it has to be, to a certain extent, predictable. So understand, if we can't predict what's happening, if it doesn't seem rational to us, we'll default to a negative about the movement, and therefore about your state of mind, and therefore about your content. So your content could be great, But if your movement isn't predictable or doesn't have a good reason for happening, then we won't like your content as much. So I always think with clients about mapping out a journey on stage. How does your movement on stage help tell the story that you're telling, even whether it's a story of data? So if you're talking about the increase of some numbers or some value, for example, where do you start talking about those numbers, and how big is the increase? So where do you want to walk to as those numbers increase, and where do you want to stop? And do you want to set up different areas of that stage as having meaning? Are there some negative stories that you want to tell in a certain part of the stage and reserve that for some negative elements? Is there a part of the stage that you want to create which is about really positive thoughts? And so you can start to attach parts of the stage physically to a psychological state in your audience. Does that make sense to you, Jane?
Yeah, very much so. And I think a lot of us have heard about, kind of standing in your power position. Maybe it's, mid-center stage where you're really in something serious and important when you're saying the things that are the most impactful in your performance, or maybe it's for your opening or whatever it might be. I'm thinking about some people who perhaps pace. What is it about pacing, like a tiger?
Sure. Well, I think you put your finger on it, is that when we see the person pace, we would liken them to a caged animal. Now, there's nothing right or wrong about that, but that's the kind of impression and feeling and gut feeling that an audience will get from it. Because understand, humans do this pacing, apes do this pacing, dogs do this pacing, big cats do this pacing. Yeah, a lot of predators essentially do this pacing. So, is that the impression you want to give off? If it is, are you doing it enough? I would say. See, I always work with my clients to say, here's what you're doing, here's the way it makes me feel, here's the way I pretty much guarantee you across the world it will make people feel. Now, is that what you want? And if you want that, I can guarantee you're not doing it big enough at the moment. Most people are really only doing physicality at about, 7 on the dial, whereas the dial really does go up to number 11. So what I want to do is amp up that physicality to a level whereby the audience get it immediately. Yeah? Think about a great film. Yeah? Think about a great film. How do you know the hero has come on? Yeah? Because the filmmakers construct it, so there is no doubt that this is the hero or the heroine. When the bad person comes on, there is no doubt that has happened. I pretty much guarantee you, any film you watch, their shadow will come on before them. It'll be lit in such a way that their shadow comes into the shot before they ever come into the shot. And when our primitive brain sees shadow, it's alerted to danger. When shadow comes in before object, it's alerted to danger. So they're using a really primal system to alert the audience with a sense of fear. So pacing is definitely a result of fear or a result of I'm a predator, especially when the pacing person has direct eye contact with an individual or some individuals and paces. So is that what you want? If it isn't, stop doing it and do something else. And there's a whole vocabulary for other things that you could do, essentially, but that's not one of them that you should be doing if you want to instill the audience with a sense of fear or trepidation, a sense that you are being predated upon or you are about to predate on them.
So let's talk about physical appearances and things like that. I remember seeing you once saying that a politician might not get his message across because he had a mustache. So we may have some men on the line who have mustaches or goatees or something like that. And there could be some things for women as well that might be distractions or things that could put us maybe into a more judgment mode than we want to be. What are a few of those might be? And that'll be my last question, and then we'll open it up for the group to ask you some questions.
Sure. Well, look, as a generalization, I would say this, is that when insufficient data, the primitive brain defaults to a negative. Therefore, if stuff covers your face, if stuff especially covers me being able to read your lips, because when we're listening to people, we're actually spending a lot of time trying to correlate what we hear with the way their lips are moving to get a better idea, a more predictable idea of what it was. If anything covers that, we stand less of a chance of getting it right, and our brain knows that, and it doesn't like that. Our brain wants to be correct. It wants to know exactly what's happened and what's going to happen next. It wants to know what happened and be able to predict the next thing in order for our safety. So, the things that will put an audience off is not being able to see you. Not being able to see you. Can it see your hands? Can it see? Have you got tools and weapons in your hands? Can it see your mouth? Can it see your eyes? Yeah? Can it see, is your belly area open to it? Or have you closed it off, crunched it in, covered it over? Yeah? Are your hands in your pockets so I now can't see what you have in your hands? Are they behind your back so I can't see what you have in your hands? And maybe you think, well, this can't make a huge amount of difference. But in the world of business that I work in, and in the world of speakers who are trying to get across a really tricky message or important message, in that world, even if this gives you 1% advantage, you have to take the advantage. And I guarantee you it gives you way more than 1%. But even if it gives you a 1% advantage to show more of yourself, you have to take the advantage. Because a 1% advantage on a crowd of 1,000 is 10 more people. Yeah? And those 10 more people, one of them could be the decision maker. One of them could be the decision maker to the next piece of work that you get out of that. So I'm constantly trying to shave off more advantage for speakers and for presenters.
So, one last question.
Sure.
When people come out onto the stage, we're often talking about your opening being so important. A lot of people will go out and talk about, it's great to be here in Philadelphia. Anything on the language that you think, or I guess I'm not sure if that's really where you live, but I'm sure with all of the high stakes speeches that you have your clients giving, what is a way that we absolutely don't want to open our presentation? And you can certainly give me your ideal way as well.
So I would say the ideal way to open your presentation is slowly, with short words and not many of them. Because number one, your audience isn't listening. So you shouldn't start into your best content because they simply won't have heard it. Yeah?
Okay, that's good to know.
It's really they've just got to get comfortable with you. So the first things you want to say are about making a relationship with them. Yeah, it's about helping them understand that you live in the same world as them. You're from the same planet. Yeah, and you've got to give them time to get used to how your body is, how you're going to be moving, what your tonality of voice is going to be, what your accent is, because for many of them they're going to need to adjust.
Right.
Yeah. You don't need to adjust your accent. They need to adjust their brains to understand that some of the sounds are going to be different. And their brain can do that. But if you speak fast at the start, the brain can't. And then it just gives up. And it goes, I'll never understand this. To understand, if you go too quick and you try and get your best thing out right at the start because you go, I'm going to wow them, they're going to be so in awe of the thing that I got out at the start that it'll smack them dead. I guarantee a whole bunch of the audience just went, this isn't for me, I'll never understand this, this is way beyond my potential, not only to understand what the person's saying, but if I could understand what they were saying, to understand some of the words or what the content is about. So I would say, start it slow, and start it simple and make a human connection with them.
And maybe if we have an opening story that has some kind of excitement to it, we could start slow with small words and build to get them into it a little bit more excitement building. Okay. All right. So let me put it in Q&A mode. Okay, so if you have a question for Mark, go ahead and press *6 and just tell me your name and we'll get you teed up with your question. I suspect we'll have a few of them, but sometimes these are a little slow getting started, Mark, so let's open it up. Anybody have a question for Mark?
I do. It's Amy Baskin. I'm wondering about using the open palm gestures at the truth plane, and I wonder if you could be more specific. So how do you have the fine line between using those appropriately and just being distracting, overusing them?
Sure.
Good question, Amy.
Yeah, so here's what I'd say is that distraction comes from the gesture not being predictable. So if the palms are open but it's very erratic as to where they're going, or they're very fast and unpredictable as to where they're going, that will be distracting. The only reason it's distracting is the brain can't make sense of it. If the brain can make sense of it, it's never distracting because it knows what it is. So in general, the cleaner and clearer you keep your gestures, and to an extent the slower you keep your gestures in that area, the more predictable you are. Essentially, the more the audience view you as being calm, assertive, a leader, and trustworthy. Okay? Now, if your gestures become erratic and the gesture plane is asymmetrical, so say, for example, you've got one hand up at head height and the other hand down in the truth plane or down in what I call grotesque, which is hands hanging down by the side, and if those gesture planes keep swapping round, i.e. one hand goes up in the air as the other goes down, it becomes wholly unpredictable. I guarantee the audience stop listening to you. Because now they're using most of their brain capacity to try and work out what does your physicality mean. Other humans are trying to look for meaning in your behavior all the time. First of all, we want meaning from the nonverbal behavior, then we'll allow meaning from the verbal behavior. So keep your nonverbal behavior clear, consistent, and simple, and then it will never be distracting.
Okay.
Did that answer it for you, Amy?
I just had one more question about it, too, about what is overusing it, and how much are you using that? And I'm doing this gesture as I'm asking you.
Okay, so what is overusing it?
What is overusing? What would be appropriate use?
Well, you see, it would all be situational. I don't know what would be appropriate until I would know the exact space, because nothing is ever inappropriate for the right appropriate situation. So, I would say to you, test it out, test how it feels to you, yeah? And see how it feels, see how it changes your tone of voice, see how an audience reacts to it, and start making some judgments about what is the right level for the situations that you're in. So, for example, large gestures moving more outside the body sphere. If you're presenting in a meeting, you're speaking in a meeting of maybe just 12 people, you're going to go into their personal space. It might not be appropriate. But you can make about as big a gesture as you ever like on a stage speaking to 1,000 people, and it will never look big. I've just been working with a client of mine who's making a keynote in Las Vegas. They have a huge stage with two big screens either side, a big one in the center. They've got 5 cars on stage at the time, and really there's nothing that this guy can do which will ever look over the top or too big, because the environment is like a circus. It's like the biggest show you've ever seen. So it's really about what environment are you in, and what do you need to do in order to fill that environment appropriately.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amy. If anyone else would like to ask Mark a question, go ahead and hit *6, and that will unmute you. And I'll
excuse me, this is Kim Magdalene. I have a suggestion for Amy. While Mark was speaking, I went to his website, and I'm looking at his video of his keynote speech, and he's demonstrating the truth plane consistently. So that might be an excellent way to take a look at it, because he's like, going and going and going, right, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, because if you get yourselves over to the website, which is www.truthplanes.com, that will give you links to a whole bunch of YouTube videos as well, and you can see me demonstrating this stuff and get a sense of me doing it. Now, how I do it isn't necessarily how you're going to do it. The environments that I speak aren't necessarily exactly the environments that you speak. You guys will be speaking in bigger places, smaller places, different places, okay? So take a look at that. And also, my book, Winning Body Language, has diagrams in it. I've also got some DVDs coming up, so stay tuned around that if you join my mailing list. In fact, actually, if you go on the website, you can join the mailing list, and you get a chapter of the book by joining the list. So that will give you some ideas, and I'll keep you informed on DVDs that are coming out as well. But thanks for alerting everybody to the videos there.
That's awesome. Now, I think we have another question.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
I think we had someone just before. Is that Jackie?
Yes.
I think we had maybe someone just before you. So let's go ahead with you, Jackie, first, and then we'll get to the other one for a second. Go ahead. Was that Jackie that was asking a question?
It's Julie. Is that
okay? Go ahead, Joy.
Okay, Julie. So my question is about color. I was told when I was showing a professional my video that I had chosen the wrong color to wear, because I didn't realize that the screen behind me, or the actual curtains of the stage, was black, and I was wearing black, and that I blended. What are your thoughts on color?
Sure. So look, there's lots of stuff out there around color theory, and some of it is relatively scientific, and some of it is kind of, might be true, but is kind of made up. So here's what I know in terms of the primitive brain, is the primitive brain is highly alerted to the color red, and highly alerted to the colors black and yellow together. All of those colors are warning signals to the brain. So we will be alerted if you come on in bright red. We'll definitely see you. We won't necessarily think that you're that friendly, but we will be watching you. If you come on, looking like a wasp or a bee, we'll absolutely be alerted to you, because you're displaying some primitive color combinations which are DNA programmed into us. So there's that for a start that you need to take into consideration. And of course, if you are the same color as the background, there is a good chance that you're less likely to be seen. Look, here's what I do, okay, is that I know what the audience need to know is they need to be able to see my face, and can they see where my hands are. So it's easy for me, to an extent, being a guy, because what I can do is put on a very crisp white shirt, okay, I can have the cuffs quite long, so that my darker jacket will show up those white cuffs, so that you can always see where my hands are, okay? And it doesn't matter if I've got a dark suit and I'm against a black background, because the white cuffs will always show up. Remember, Michael Jackson always used to wear sparkly white gloves and white socks that you could see, and the only reason is that right at the back of the auditorium you could always see him dance. You could always see where his hands were and where his feet were because of that. So what I want to do is make sure the colors that I'm wearing frame my face, so the audience know where to look to for the face. They know where to look to for the hands. And I personally wear red socks. And one, because I like Red Sox, but also it alerts the audience as to where my feet are. Now, this is kind of useful for me because I'm there talking about body language, and it is there to grab the audience's attention to my body. But there's some of the things that I do. I hope that's useful for you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Now, there was one other woman who had a question. I would like to get to her, and then I see that Bob and Scott, you have both unmuted yourself, so I'll come to you next.
Okay. Yes, this is Tia Brewer-Footman. I'm definitely enjoying the presentation. My question is, so let's say you get on stage, you start out wrong. Maybe they didn't pick up on your joke, you didn't build that relationship. Is there any way to build or regain trust in the middle or after you've started? Because I know it's all about that, that opening, building in the very beginning and gaining their mind, their brains, their thoughts, and that trust. Is there any way to recover, or is it game over if you don't do it in the beginning?
Yeah, absolutely. It's never game over until you've been run out of town, okay? So even if they've locked you up and you're in prison, it's not game over. There's still an audience there somewhere. So here's what I'd say is look, I've lost a bunch of audiences in my time. I've lost them. I've offended them. Some awful things have happened. Luckily, not as much as great things, but they've happened for sure. Here's what I do, and here's the way to win them back. Apologize. Yeah, it's your fault. Okay? Say what's happened from your point of view. Okay? It's never a bad thing. It's just you telling the truth. You're just saying, here it is for me. And often I have stood there and I've gone, you know what? I'm getting the sense you don't like this. This is not for you. Tell me, what would be better for you? And it's surprising, people will go, well, no, it's just you said this, you said X, and I go, oh right, I see. That's where let me reframe what was said there. So there's often something that's put them off, but it's not until you go, hey, I'm sorry, I think I've lost you here. It's my fault. What's going on? Not until you ask them that you can start to rebuild the relationship. And I think we often think, and clients of mine will often go, God, no, Mark, that's too risky. I would never do that. And I say, look, number one, you got pretty much nothing to lose at this point, even though you think you have. You've got everything to gain, and I have never seen this not work. When done with real honesty and integrity, I have never seen an audience not go, you know what, I like this person now. I like them because they were honest, they told the truth, they cared about me. Yeah, they're living on the same planet as me, because the audience are going, this feels wrong. The moment you go, you know what, it feels wrong, the audience go, yeah, now you're on the same planet as me. Does that make sense?
That's excellent, yes. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you.
I know that Bob and Scott both have a question, but I think we might only have time for one more. So whichever one of you wants to speak up, we'll get to that question.
Hey, Jane, this is Bob Spiel.
Go ahead, Bob.
I was just wondering with the last 2 minutes that we have, how does Mark engage with the client? As we look at this and think, wow, there's a lot of good stuff here I'd like to begin with, but when I want to take it to the next level, what type of work does he do?
Coach, you mean? Okay, yeah. So that's a great way to finish off. And Scott, maybe you want to email me your question, and I'll get it to Mark for you if you have something that's burning there.
That'd be great.
Okay, so let's say somebody wants to work with you. What is their best first step?
Very easy. Just email me, mark@truthplane.com, mark@truthplane.com. Email me and say, look, I'd like to investigate what it would look like if we were to work together, and say, here's who I am, here's what I'm about, a rough description of where you're at the moment and where you'd like to be, and that will help me then just get on an exploratory call with you and go, let's talk about what you want to do, where you want to get, and basically after a half-hour call, we can decide together how we might work together, whether it's going to work for us because of time or spatial difference on the planet. But most people who approach me, we get to work together in some way. So if you are looking towards that, just drop me an email and say, here's where I'm at the moment, and here's where I'd really like to be, and we can have a half-hour chat about how we'd get there together. And
minimum,
then you can move
everyone on the call should be getting your book, hey Mark. So where should they go to pick up your book?
Well, anywhere that sells books, really. It's available across the planet. Amazon's always a great one because look, it's a cheap place to get it. So go to Amazon. Winning Body Language by Mark Bowden.
I want to say thank you so much, Mark, for taking the time out of your very busy schedule and being with us. I know you're hopping on a plane later today, so really, really appreciate it.
And we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Wealthy Speakers Show. Please visit speakerlauncher.com for your free Wealthy Speaker audit, and visit speakerlauncher.com/podcast for show notes and many more resources to help you catapult your speaking business. See you soon, Wealthy Speakers.